Video games are more and more being turned into something akin to movies, and that includes not just budget or their generated revenue, but a lot of very similar perspectives go into making it a cinematic vision of some sort. Each of these games has not just a big budget, but it has to feel like it's huge, like it's one of these epic movies. And there is a problem where there is kind of a runaway epicness. Movies are now three parts, and it's a ridiculous experience. It's like movies are becoming a kind of movie as a service where you have to subscribe for three movies. And I'm not going to go and see movies like that anymore. There are cinematic universes that can very occasionally get away with that for me, but I highly doubt it. And I highly doubt it because it feels manipulative. And I know that there are constraints with movies where it's hard to tell a you there's just no way of giving a book justice when adapting it to a screen, because you've got time constraints, and I can describe in words things that you just can't do in a movie without an incredible amount of budget. And that's just budget. We're talking about the time and the effort, the expertise. Some of those things are, we just don't have enough humans to go around who have the kinds of skills to do the kinds of things that a writer can dream up. And I can sit down in the quiet of a room, and at 3 in the morning I can spend an hour and get something down on paper that would take a team of experts a year to reproduce for film. It's just not going to happen. There's a limited amount of resources. And I want to think something of the same with video games, but in terms of the attention available to from the players for the game, and the amount of budget that goes in from the project to create the game. I don't like the idea of games being compared to movies at all, because they're not the same thing. Um, games are something that a player gets to be a part of, not necessarily to influence, because there are a lot of on rails video games, and it's kind of a necessity in a lot of cases. The concept of a truly immersive, player driven story is something that is getting diluted into the pay to play kind of subscription based seasons pass, yearly pass, microtransaction funded, whatever nonsense that's being put out now is stretching a lot of ideas away from the submission of a development house into creating a game that they are shaping things for a player's experience. They're pulling away from that into how can we nickel and dime? How can we make more money off of these concepts? How can we lure a player back into playing our game as opposed to other games? How do we steal more of their time away from them? That doesn't seem like a good thing to do. But I wanted to talk about cutscenes more specifically, because I've got a lot of opinions, obviously, about other elements that are wasted opportunities or just bad in terms of storytelling or what have you for games. And I'm a kind of a classic dude who likes tactics and who likes mechanics. And part of the fun for me of playing a video game is figuring out how the game works, and hating how it works, and knowing how to do it better, and I usually do. I mean, of course, going from idea to the real thing is not the same. So I kind of give some. I mean, I forgive a little bit of the inadequacies of everything that I use and play, even though I know better. Getting from knowing better to creating the thing to putting the thing out to supporting the thing, etc. That's different. But so I like mechanics, and I like finding ways around mechanics. I love learning how to cheese stuff, which is it's like abusing a mechanic that's there, but it's a very meta perspective for me, in that when there's a feature that's there, it's there. I'm using the feature that's there. I can save my game, I can load my game. If I die, I load my game. What's the problem? I just keep trying and trying and trying, and every time I don't like the outcome, I'll go and load it again, do it again. I'm I'm abusing it. I'm abusing mechanics. I'm abusing sometimes fundamentally necessary mechanics. And unless a game has specifically designed ways to dissuade me from doing that, and there are ways of doing it, I'll do it, and I'll feel good about it. That's part of the play for me. But cutscenes. Cutscenes are moving a person away from being a player playing a game to being a viewer watching a movie. And even though a cutscene is a very focused, it is in the world of the game. It is using the game. It's not going and seeing some file. It's immersed in the characters or the environment of the game itself. So it's not too distant from a game. And the problem is, for me, other than I'm not sitting there interacting with it, other than the fact that it's showing stuff that I can't do, I really, really can't stand that kind of thing. It's not that. It's the fact that when I'm playing a game and there are mechanics which aren't good enough, and I think that it's because maybe they needed a bit more time, I, I want to say that I don't think the developers are stupid, but I think that developers are stupid. I think that too many developers don't play their own game, don't listen to their audience, who are always going to be more expert at it than the developers. There's just more people out there. Of the more people out there, they're able to eventually get around to million monkeys typing on typewriters, and they'll be able to craft a better explanation for how things would be better. This is why the aggressive, trolly, angry users for any particular quote unquote community, when they're talking to developers about the game, they have insights. Even if they're not articulating it very well, they have insights the developers can't have, even though the developers are kind of expert from a different angle. Obviously, they can't be replaced by mere users, because they do have some insider understanding of the engines and the industry and all this kind of stuff. But in terms of player interactive mechanics, the players are always going to know what's best. But the fact is, when you're looking at a cutscene, there's just no playing happening there, even if it's in the realm of the game. It's like creating a novel and shipping it with a game. If anybody ever gets a physical copy of a game, let's say it's a special edition, and this time the special edition comes with your slave labor t-shirt and your terrible pseudo canvas bag and your pewter mug and all this junk, and it comes with a novel. Now, that's basically the equivalent of shipping somebody a digital version of it and shipping somebody a version of it and shipping them a cutscene. It's pleasurable, time wasted. It's appropriate to the game, but it's not actually the game. And the problem I have is that all of the budget, in terms of money, of time, of expertise, of skills, went from creating or improving the assets or the mechanics for the game into the not game. It's like taking one of your staff members off of the project and having them tasked to write a book. Like, no. Honestly, I would love to see a game that releases a series of novels before the game is released. I don't think many developers are smart enough to do that kind of thing, because boy, is that hard. And boy, is the novelization of stuff beforehand going to, as a writer is exploring the world, the writer is creating the lore. And that novelist would have to be a core part of the game itself. And a writer in that sense is often a very different sort of person than the kind of person who would be writing for the lore, the story within the game. I dream. And I see a cutscene as taking away from the game development. Whenever I sit down as a player and I see a cutscene, I think, oh man, this is for every minute of cutscene represents, I don't even know how many thousand man hours of however many people had to get together, and however much, not just time, however much skill of all these different people, however much education that's backing them, all the costs for all the tools, all of the requisite resources that went behind making a cutscene, every single moment of it, could have instead been used to, I mean, give me a search feature for my inventory list, like something, like anything. Some of these things are just so insultingly absent, and I have to think, okay, well, there are limitations because this game is also adapted to a console and buttons, reasons, and I sometimes there's just no excuse. There isn't. And I know it's not the same people who would be working on the movie, the book, the novel, the external stuff, the websites, the going to conventions. I know it's not those same people who could be not hired in the first place or defunded to some degree and retasked to making the game. I know that those are different skill sets, but it would be nice if there were games that just didn't have any of that stuff. And here's the problem. A cutscene is a cheat. A cutscene is kind of like one of those, well, now they're shorts, but they would be trailers, which is interesting because they now start coming in front of movies. Trailers that get released for a movie are clip shows showing sometimes the best of the movie. It's just a way of selling the movie, right? It doesn't necessarily, we're in on the game. We know that the cutscenes don't necessarily represent the gameplay, just like we know that trailers don't represent the movie. But the problem with cutscenes, the problem with trailers for games, is they're 100% fake. They're not from gameplay. And there are even gameplay, quote unquote, gameplay videos that are released a year before the release of the game, and they're lies. And we've even seen a developer sitting there being interviewed with a gamepad. Let's with a gamepad going, oh, and look at this feature over here, and yeah, this is great. Look at this combat over here. And somebody else will just notice that they took their hands off of the controller, because what they're doing is they're playing pretend like they're playing the game when they're actually, it's pre-rendered nonsense. And it really, really lets people down. And there are now, I really appreciate the dedication, I know how I want to describe these people, but there are people that do side-by-side comparisons of cutscenes and gameplay from what they will say is promised and what is actual. So what is originally promised, what was storyboarded, what was described at conventions, etc., the launch announcement, what was described in the trailers leading up, what was described and what they got in beta, what they got in maybe there was an open beta or a preview of some sort for the suckers who went and bought it early, reserved a copy kind of thing. And for what came out first patch, second patch, they'll do that and they'll look at it side by side and go, that's that stuff over there, that's just fake. Like that's completely made up. There's one thing to have a beta that has some broken features or even has like a switch in a graphics engine that's like, it's wrong. It's like turned the wrong way. And then they're like, when the game releases, they go, oops, and change it a little bit. And then maybe the graphics goes, just falls flat. And people all scream, oh, the graphics were better because of this. This suit looked great. Puddles looked great over here. Something like that. And there are technical reasons for that to happen. But there's no technical reason why cutscenes need to exist even in the first place. They're a waste of time, and they feel like a waste of time. They feel like they're selling a lie if they're going to be used in marketing. And they feel like they're a terrible waste of time for a person that's sitting there playing a game when there were other things that other efforts could have been funded for these other mechanics, for these other, like, why don't I have a chat feature in this game over here? Why doesn't it have this other feature here? Why is it so difficult to get around the inventory? Why don't I have enough bag space? Why? Just, and on and on and on. And all they needed to do is just axe that one cutscene over there, and then take that cutscene, that effort, pull it into the assets of fixing that one character's movement. I mean, get rid of the clipping in this like player-driven pseudo gameplay cutscene-esque thing, and pull it in and make that good, make that great, because I want to see more cutscenes that are just organically generated based on how I make my character look, for example. And there's some games that try to do that. And that would be a better way of being honest about cutscenes without lying about pre-rendered stuff, even though you can kind of fake some of that too. So yeah, that's my thought about games versus movies and budgeting stuff. Frankly, I think games shouldn't be like movies, shouldn't try to be like movies. And I think the fact that that indie developers being constrained, budgetarily constrained and knowledge constrained, etc., time especially, means that they omit these epic movie experiences that other developers are throwing into their games. These other developers are locked down by hiring a development house for the cutscene related stuff, and small companies just can't afford to do all that stuff. They leave all the nonsense out and they focus on the game, and that's it. And they play their own game. Maybe they'll play their competitors that are kind of play-alike games, and they'll steal from just the best. And where that AAA game will have to ignore its users because they already allotted a timeline and budgets, and they have paperwork that various people have signed, and they're locked down by all these promises. A small development house can just go and look at the problems, go, well, we're not going to make that mistake in the first place. And you end up with indie games that are they're grittier, but they're more honest. They're just better, and they don't have these damned cutscenes.